you can use the podium mic. Is it just you today, or? Okay, good, awesome. You're almost to lunch. We have one talk, and then we will have a big lunch break. There's lots of great places nearby. It's a beautiful city to explore. Who's here in Atlanta for the first time? Awesome. How many people are here in the US for the first time? Very few. Yeah, I don't know that I would travel into the US this year. Like it's a very crazy time to be here. Yeah. All right.
Can we start in?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes, cool.
Actually, about 7 minutes.
Okay.
So make sure you're drinking water. It's humid here. It's you know, beautiful. It's a beautiful city, but it is a little humid.
Yeah.
This is one of the great American cities that really shows its fall colors. So when you're walking around this year, you really get to see all of the different colors of the trees, like out front and everything. It's really gorgeous. Not every city in the U.S. is like that. I had a wild experience thinking of seasons. I was actually just in New Zealand for the first time in my life. I don't know, has anybody been to New Zealand? New Zealand is an amazing place. I grew up in Hawaii, and I was really struck by how much the vibe of New Zealand is like the vibe of Hawaii. It was very surprising to me. But the other thing that really was cognitively, giving me some trouble was I know that Australia and New Zealand have opposite season from us. In my brain, I know that. But to be walking around in New Zealand in September and seeing all of the pine trees putting out that little brand new green bud and all of the other trees that are just beginning to bloom and all the brand new lambs, and I'm like, this is wild, right? Like actually seeing physical evidence and connecting that with your brain, Like I remember as a kid in Hawaii, there were a lot of people that I knew that were into surfing would talk about endless summer, and I don't think I ever really put together what that meant. Like you could actually go and be in summer somewhere in the world all year round. Like it just never really connected for me until just this trip to New Zealand.
We are ready?
You guys want to start a little early, or we got about 5 minutes, but I'm happy to let you go ahead and get started. All right. Let's get going here. All right, Artem and Matthew, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for our talk today. Before we start with the talk, just 1 or 3 quick questions, something like this. How many of you already have built an IDP or platform, or however you call it internally? How many of you are already using Crossplane? How many of you are already starting to using Kro, the new kit on the block, Kubernetes Resource Orchestrator, or play with them? Okay, get it. A few. Cool. Thank you very much. And welcome to our talk. Our talk will be a tough one, how to make the dev pain go away with the right level of abstractions for your platform. And before we start, a short introduction about ourselves. Mathieu, can you
Hi everyone, I'm Mathieu Benoit. I'm a platform engineer. I'm also a Clone Native ambassador and a CNCF sandbox project, Score, maintainer. I'm glad to be here with Artem and you all.
Yeah, short to me, obviously. My name is Artem Laiko. I'm a head of platform engineering for IITS Consulting, a startup from Germany, founded 2019. I'm CNCF certified Kubestronaut, also platform engineering ambassador and co-published author of the book Implementing GitOps with Kubernetes. If you start to build a platform, in the most cases, you will get in touch with GitOps. But enough about us, what you have to expect from the talk today and what not.
Yeah, actually, what we want to cover is what we have learned, listened, and also experimented while building platform. And when you build internal developer platform, there is always needs. There is pain points to resolve. There is more collaboration to have. And what we want to highlight today and illustrate is what is the right level of abstraction for your developers or any technical stakeholder with your platform. And we don't have the answer. And we won't answer literally for your own needs, your own business, your own company, your own developer, your own platform, right? But we want to show some example with tools that you could use to fit maybe the right abstraction for them, right? The goal is to show this combination of tools with live demo, right? So we hope you will enjoy this.
A lot of demos. I heard some rumors. But before we start, let's take a look at the numbers. I was exploring this topic after I saw Kro, the new kid on the block. I wanted to go beyond the basic and was starting to see what I can build with Kro. And I found a lot of edge cases, and I'm putting everything on a block, and this is how we both met each other. I have a problem to solve with abstraction, you have a problem to solve. As you can see, the community have a problem to solve. And as you can see, I mean, we have numbers like, I mean, it was featured by IT Next itself, it was boosted by Medium, it's have something about 30K, some AI started to scrap it. They're not the real numbers, it's about 30K views, about 11K reads, so read ratio about 40%. And someone has put it on Reddit and to see also what the community think about it. And yeah, I mean, if we are starting to build a platform in the most cases, we are speaking about abstractions.
Yeah, exactly, Artem. So some of you are building a platform like you answered earlier in the introduction, and you know your question, one of your questions is, when people are interacting with a platform, what is the right level of abstraction? And some people love abstraction, but some people hate abstraction. And you may have different audience, different customer, different expertise in front of you. So there is this double-faced coin that in the comment was illustrated. Could you illustrate that?
We are here, we are listened, and we are not judged. So we are just showing you the one abstraction. You can see the one side, keep this man away, they're meaning me, from my code. And also, no Kro, again, YAML over YAML, the developer should YAML. This is the one side. And then you have the other side, they really recognize the value of abstraction if you're doing the right way. As you can see, yeah, abstraction is the right way. A lot of people also say, yeah, the right way, but you presented the wrong solution. It's true. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to know your platform, you need to know your team, you need to know the skill set. But like I say, we are here, we are listened, and we are not judged. So we just presented you the both sides of it. And I guess, I mean, at the end of the day, if we start with abstraction...
That's the reality, right? You have your own tool. So we will present Kro and Score, but maybe someone will say, hey, I'm using Helm and Crossplane and Terraform. Yeah, sure. Just bear with us with the concept and the approach, the iteration you may have and you may want to do as well. Because at the end of the day, we need to step back. It's not about tools. It's about pain points. So you should ask yourself, what are the pain points you are solving? What is the business outcome for your platform and for your developer at the end of the day?
Yeah, like you say, it's about the pain point to solve it. And if we are just taking a look at a simple web application, you will see here, for example, that we have, a simple web application consists of manifests like HPR, service, deployment, ingress, service account, and all the stuff. And I mean, if you are just want to deploy the HPR or the pod autoscaler, you need to be aware of if you are not running on a managed cloud, if you remember Kelsey Hightower, the hard way. And if you're having a Kubernetes solution, you don't have a container network interface, you don't have a CSI, container storage interface, and all the stuff. So I have also a lot of projects we are running on edge, we are running on premise. So you don't have, for example, a matrix server running on it. As a developer, if you want to configure it, you need to take care of it. And then, I mean, let's just take a look at a simple deployment. You need to be aware how to configure for a simple web application the right readiness, health props. Also, you need to be aware of, I mean, if you're doing the CKD, Certified Kubernetes Application Administrator, you learn the stuff. But also, you need to be aware of the security context. You need to be aware for your organization. How do you put some certificates? How do you put some rules on it? And so on and so on. And the most developers are not aware of it. And we are just speaking about a simple web application here. You have API, you have gRPC services. You have different types you want to deploy. And like we say, this is just a simple web application and you need to take a lot of care of it. Of course, the one said the developer should just learn it. Yeah, the other side said, no, you need as a team to provide a self-service, so you're getting adoption rate just to keep it here. And this is the pain points we are seeing on the market, and I was involved in 2 preparation of a security audits last year. And you can see after 11 years of Kubernetes, we have the problem building secure images. Then we have the problem how we package the images in the right manifest. I mean, if you have a web application, you have different requirements as if you have an API. Then we have the problem also dealing with, for example, if you want to take infrastructure on top of it and also extend it and adding, for example, I don't know, you wanted to run Redis inside the cluster or outside the cluster as a managed service, you need to care as a developer more and more about the manifest you're using. We are not speaking about tool here, and we are not starting to speaking about the SBOOM stuff and everything coming for us in the next year. This is the reality we see and we want to solve. Maybe it's for you different, but Matteo, you are working about, I don't know, now 5, 6, 7, like forever as a customer success engineer, and you a developer having also, like we have exchanged, a lot of these pain points. And in the most cases, how we want to tackle it from our point of view, or how we try to solve it with tools like Kro. And Matteo, please.
Yeah,
explain
and again, it's about the challenges, the pain points, the need, the outcome you want to achieve, right? So today what we want to show is how we could address some of them with 4 demos, right? The first one will be how my developer could focus on their code, delivering value for the business, while leveraging some abstraction that the platform could provide, right? And here we want to use today Kro as an example, and the goal will be to see in action how Kro could manage the generation of complex and complicated manifests. The pod info example you demonstrated, HPA, network policy, service account, etc., all generated by Kro and abstracted from a developer standpoint. So we see a fit here. Again, you may use already Helm or Crossplane to kind of doing this composition of manifest and resources. That's fine as well, but we will show you in action with Kro. Kro has this other advantage, like Crossplane could do, the composition of manifest, but also infrastructure. And here we will use KRM, so the Kubernetes Resource Management, in order to use and actually provision and manage infrastructure, dependencies of your workload, your container. We will see in cluster and outside the cluster with a Google Cloud example, for example. But here, again, we will use Kro, and we will see some scenario to provision, hey, I need a Redis database. Please help me. The third demo will be, from this, we have already fixed some kind of issue, pain point, but we want to go further and upper and kind of above of this, and how we could add more flexibility. So we will discuss some options here. We will add more dynamic templating mechanism to add more flexibility in between the developer and the contract with the platform. And to finish, the fourth demo will be more about, hey, what about the local experience? What about the local testing? How I could fail fast in my inner loop as a developer and maybe not waiting to deploy something in Kubernetes. So that's the goal of this fourth demo. We have a boring and seamless continuous confidence, we call it, which is how I deploy everything in Kubernetes, right? And we call it boring. Don't make me wrong, it's very important. GitOps with Argo or Flux is a good way to keep consistent between environment, having a source of truth in Git, being conformant with some security aspect. So we have this boring how I deploy Kubernetes how I deploy manifest in Kubernetes. We will use Argo in our demo. We will see we won't talk too much about that. It's just a seamless experience. You could use Flux again. You could do push mechanism if you prefer, whatever the way to push your manifest into the cluster. Don't pay attention yet too much in details, but that's the giant workflow here, because at the end of the day, as platform engineer, at the bottom of this image, I'm configuring the cluster, I'm configuring the tool, I'm exposing a contract, right? We will discuss about that. And on the other side, as a developer, how I use and leverage the contract, how I could be more autonomous, how I could do self-service, and hopefully with some pain points resolved by the platform engineering team and the platform. Let's
So
do it.
yeah, let's burn the chips and see if the demo's working. I mean, for demos. So we are starting. Yeah, you can see it. Hopefully, the resolution is okay for you.
Is it big enough on the back?
That's okay. Thank you very much. So we are starting just with a demo, and the first question is, of course, like Matteo already explained, we just first wanted to going away with the abstraction from the developer with Kro to compose just a simple Kubernetes native manifest for a simple generic web application. But before we are starting, for example, why we are starting to using Kro or what is Kro, and we really like it because with, give me a second, I guess it should be like this one. We really like it because you not just only can, it's not just because it's a new kit, on the blog starting last year, but you can also do something like you can define your own resource graph definition, like your graph, not just only for Kubernetes resources, but you can do things like this. You can say, first please create a VPC, then create an IAM role, and before you're creating an AKS cluster, you can fetch the output, and then you can use this output by creating it. It is really mighty, and also really nice because it's a lightweight if you compare it with another tools. So this is why we like Kro and another, but this is just to giving a short introduction. We start, but we're starting slow. So we're starting with compose just Kubernetes manifest. And our demo or overview looks like this one. As platform engineer, we're defining a resource graph definition, which create for you a custom resource definition. It's a really nice way to create a custom resource definition by not creating one. So then, as a developer, we will use the same type or kind from workload and creating a custom resource, and then Kro will handle all the magic for us, validate it, and create all the stuff. Our setup running on kind, we will share the demo after it with you so you can directly starting and explore it by yourself. So this is because we are choosing kind. And yeah, let's take a look at the, now we impersonate the platform engineering view, and let's take a look at the resource graph definition, how it looks like. You define here, for example, the kind, we call it workload type, then you can define some specs, you can define some default values, you can also already create everything you need, or setting some values, or set its requirement from point of EU platform that the developer need to put in or not need to put in. You can also overwrite it or let it overwrite it by the developer. You can also create your own types and then create, for example, here, if you're looking at port, you can create your own type port, and then you can create kind of an array or a new specification of it. And this is how the resources like. Here we are starting to define the graph. And if you're looking here at the resources, we have, for example, the ID, and let's take a look at the role. It makes more sense. Here we are saying, first the role must exist, and then you can creating a role binding to it. This is how you define the dependency tree. And like we already said, we want to go beyond the basics because the most use cases you see in the internet and a lot of talks just giving you an introduction. And we wanted to see the limits of Kro and also see what we can do with Kro now, and the community is evolving. So for example, we are using it here for deployment part where we configure already best practices from the market. For example, we setting the security context with some default values, but allow the developer to overwrite it. You can design how you want it, but yeah, this is how we are using the resource graph definition from the point of the platform engineers. And let's take a look at the point of the developer. Very easy. You define your custom resource from kind workload. You just need to set a name and an image. We also put some more, like environment, because this is a reality. The developer want to set some args, some environment, and so on. But in the most cases, as a developer, you just need to define, 7 lines, and everything, if you're doing it right, will be covered for you. And yeah, let's take a look on the whole picture. Again, we're zooming a little bit out and see how we're bringing Argo inside with. This is familiar to you. The only thing changing now, we are using Argo to deploy it, doing all the boring stuff. And Kro will create and evaluate then the manifest for this generic web application. We are using pod info from Stefan Prodan because you will understand it in a few minutes why we are using it. And let's just deploy it, really boring. We are doing here, we are doing, for example, git add, git commit, git push, and then Argo doing it behind the scenes. So we want to keep it boring for this part because it's not part of our talk to present how GitOps works. I guess most of you will be familiar with GitOps. And let's take a look what's happening behind the scenes. We can see here we have a new kind workload already active. We have a pod info running on it, we have a service, we have a deployment, we have HPR, we have everything from 7 lines. This is how you can design it. And yeah, I mean, this is...
So just with 5 lines as a developer in my workload manifest,
yeah, 7.
you are generating all of that, right?
Yeah, you're generating all the, as you
Thank
can
you.
define. Thank you very much. And yeah, let's jumping. Now we have composed the deployment or a simple web application, but now something coming in and say we want to use, for example, infrastructure parts, because our application running with databases, running with caches, like the Redis cache. So we want to add it, and this is the next demo where we are speaking about standardization, the infrastructure, to allow developer to use also parts like in-cluster Redis. And this is how it looks like. Same picture, familiar for you? The only thing we are doing it, we are adding Redis running inside the cluster. This is what you mean by inner loop in our case, something like this. So yeah, and let's take a look how it looks like from the developer. We impersonate now again the developer point of view, and the developer just need to say, I wanted an in-cluster Redis, true, enable it, and if you provide, for example, pointing out to it, you provide a documentation for self-service, how can they consume this custom resource. They also need just to pointing out to this one, adding a new arguments for that, so that's it. And if you don't believe us, let's just doing again the boring deployment, for example, again, git add, git commit, git push, argo cd sync, and yeah, hopefully, let's see. You can see it's starting to deploy here already a Redis instance. So just by the developer saying we wanted to enable, and now this is the reason because we're using pod info, because pod info you can run it with a cache. And we like it to show it as a developer by adding 2 lines. You also enable now a cache inside the cluster, but this is not only the things, because we are wanted to going beyond the basics, and we say what is about if we want to running a managed service outside the Kubernetes cluster, and let's take a look how it looks like. I mean, same picture, we just exchange the icons from running in cluster, we are running on GCP, over the Kubernetes config configurator using behind the scenes to creating a managed Redis. So this is why we like tools like Kro, and let's take a look from the point of the platform engineers, what we need to add. And as you can see here, we're defining just a new ID and saying memory store, this is how we call it, and then some Google GCP specific values like memory size and so on and so on. This is the point from the platform engineering, and we need to do the heavy lifting. And from point of the developer, it's a little bit much easier. They just need, again, line 7, say now we don't want having an in-cluster Redis running, we just wanted a memory store Redis running on GCP, and they need to provide, again, in line 9, the cache server. And here is how it's solved, or here it's coming like as a platform team, you need first now create the managed Redis instance, and then you need to fetch the value of it and provide it in calm way, in a way to the developer. And here how you can solve, you can create a secrets behind it. The developer just need to point out to it, because at the end of the day, you can't pointing out in your custom resource to a resource which doesn't exist at the moment. And so you can create a secret pointing out to that, and the developer behind the scene, it will create. It's take about 10 minutes, creates a managed Redis, putting the host name in the secret, and the developer just pointing out to it. This is how you can solve it, but this is also not anything. We have also other opportunities. I don't know if you like this way, how you can solve it, because it's a little bit static in this, how we solved it, or how you can solve it. And Mathieu, will you tell you more about why Score coming now in and how you can overcome this a little bit?
Yeah, because here, I mean, what you just demonstrated is very awesome. As a developer, I'm now defining my workload. It's a generic workload. I don't know for the people who has played already with Kro, but here we are not having a pod info container or website container or front-end, back-end. We have a generic workload definition, right? It was 500 of lines, and now anyone, back-end, front-end, website, API, pod info, could use this, right? Which is quite generic and very interesting here. But we have faced some, not limitation, because Kro is also young and the community is very active, but we have seen some opportunity, because now the contract between the developer and the platform is a Kubernetes API. what if I have some breaking change as platform engineer in the API? Yes, I could change the first line with some API versioning to avoid breaking change. But what about this flexibility on top of this definition? So for example, how I could inject dynamically the output of the memory store, because when I will deploy the memory store, it will take some time. I need to grab the host IP address, host name, username, password generated. So with Kro, that's wonderful because you could inject that, waiting for that and inject in config map or secret. But after that, how seamlessly and easily I could here, and sorry, I could inject in my environment variable. There is a couple of ways to achieve that, but what we have seen is that we could add a templating templating tool on top of that to have this buffer between the contract and the developer. Because also here you have seen in cluster Redis true, memory store true. But what about if, hey, I just need Redis, right? In dev, please save me some cost and do that in cluster, fine. But staging, QA, and prod, I want in memory store, in GCP, in AWS, in Azure, because more secure, more robust, whatever the reason. The point is, now my file is environment agnostic or it's not environment agnostic. So what we did is this layer on top of this to add this flexibility and adding a little bit more of abstraction. Before showing you this, we just want to have the basic about Score. It's kind of the same principle and approach with Kro. You have a spec on the left for the developer perspective. They describe what they want, their workload, their dependencies. And at the end of the day, it's generating via this Core Kubernetes implementation, for example, generating manifest. And the platform engineering is responsible to generate the contract. What is the actual Kubernetes manifest? Is it deployment, job, workload we just defined, and how to actually provision a Redis? Oh, you are in dev environment? Let's do in cluster, etc., etc. You are in staging and prod? Let's do the Google Cloud way to do that, right? So Score is a very a good fit with this landscape of how we could have more abstraction from the dev perspective. So here, what we want to show you is in this giant workflow, we are adding 2 layers. As platform engineer, at the bottom of this picture, I'm, yes, configuring Argo, Kro, and my workload, CRD and RGD, resource graph definition in Kro. But I'm also defining a layer on top of this in order to define, hey, what are what we call Score provisioner for Redis, for Postgres, for MySQL, and name it, right? That's still the platform engineering side. On the developer side, we have now also a layer between the dev and the contract, which is a Kro spec. And now the developer is not editing live and directly the Kro file, but will edit and author and be responsible of the Score file. And that's where we will see how we could generate the actual Kro RGD behind the scene. So here, if you're not familiar with Score, that's a basic Score file to illustrate the Redis example we just showed earlier with Artem. But here, what's interesting is, so it's pretty much familiar to you with the Kro resource definition we showed you, right? If you see, there is similarity. It's YAML, and there is the generic approach with image, command, variables. But you could see that at the very bottom, there is this notion of, hey, I need a Redis. I'm not telling you in cluster or memory store, for example. And by the way, when you will here provision a Redis, please inject the associated output of this Redis. Again, what the host, what the username, what the password. And then it will be reused and injected in my environment variable, etc., etc. So here, that's how now the developer will have a contract with the platform. So what we want to show you as well, on the platform engineering perspective, there is no magic here. You will have, like you have the definition of your Kro RGD workload with 500 lines. Here now, you keep that, but you have this layer. You remember when I mentioned the provisioner layer for the platform engineer? Here, that's where we have seen some use cases iterated through a list in Kro. It's not yet as robust as we wanted. The conditional aspect in Kro is at the top, at the resource level. We got some use cases where we needed more granular conditional templating. And that's where here you have a Score provisioner templating to put together as platform engineer. And you map and you translate the Score file to the Kro workload resource definition, right? And here, if you're familiar with Helm, that's Go template, that's Go function, that's Helm function. That's the same approach here, where you could have range, if then else, more granular to generate the actual workload spec. What we want to illustrate now is in action using the CLI, the tool, Score Kubernetes generate. How I could generate from a Score file to this Kro workload. My platform engineering are just defining this template you could see here, right? So I'm generating the manifest. Guess what? It will be this Kro workload, right? So locally, I'm generating the file. Again, I'm authoring the Score file as a developer. It's generating the workload. And you could see similar stuff we just saw earlier, right? But here, what we want to show you is the same flow, right? The goal is to say, hey, now I have this file, the workload definition, CR, and I want to deploy it. So still using GitOps and doing this continuous deployment way. And here, same approach, right? We are in another namespace, and other namespace, and we have our pod info, and we have the Redis, etc., right? So same approach injected here. So with this layer of abstraction, what we have seen is deploying to Kubernetes is good, right? But sometimes it's kind of complicated to set up locally. Yes, you could use, like we are using Kind cluster, but are you asking your developer to have Kubernetes cluster locally? Maybe, and that may be good. But is it adding more complexity and cognitive load? Sometimes yes, right?
And you're relying on a controller running in your cluster if you want.
Exactly. So that's a possibility. But what we have seen also is, as a developer, I don't have Kubernetes, right? And sometimes if my Kubernetes is in GCP, AWS, or Azure, maybe I will wait for the CI/CD to tell me that my container is not running as unprivileged or doesn't have the connection string to the Redis. And it's adding delay, it's adding friction, it's adding iteration. So how we could shift left kind of this test. If my container is not running as unprivileged or not talking to Redis, I should know locally as a developer. So here we have yet another opportunity with this Score abstraction. Why? Because now you could say with this exact same Score file deployed in Kubernetes via Kro, I could also deploy via Docker Compose or Podman Compose, right? So here we will have still the same Score file, you remember, and here we could do Score Compose generate. You remember the Score Kubernetes generate to workload Kubernetes CR. Now we are taking another CLI to generate the Compose file. Should I author the Compose file as developer? Maybe, and maybe not, because here I have a seamless experience to generate a Compose file locally, right? And here, guess what? I could do Docker Compose up. My pod info and my Redis will run locally, and I could test my application locally as containers without any Kubernetes involvement. So that's what we wanted to show you today.
So you define one specification running on both environments, same file.
Exactly.
So
So
do you call it workload specification or how do you call it in Score? Define one workload specification, or how do you call it? What is the name?
One spec to deploy them all or support them all. We hope you enjoy the demo. You got the journey and the different iteration on that. We have some recap for sure. I think we are out of time, or we still have a couple of minutes.
We don't have a lot of time, but in short, just giving you a wrap up or a recap. As you can see, abstraction can having both sides. In the most cases, you need to understand the pain of the developer, and then you need to solve it, because if you try to solve your platform problems, you don't getting an adoption rate. And we love to over-engineer stuff. I'm speaking for myself, so yeah. And in the most cases, yeah, you need to listen to your developer. And if you're combining the right tools, I mean, it looks maybe you have a lot of complexity, but if you combine the right tools for the right use cases, you can achieve really nice abstraction. And yeah, and also, I mean, I guess it's a fact. A lot of developers I'm working with, they also want to run the stuff locally on their machines and test it in container and not deploy everything on Kubernetes. And yeah, like I say, also have some customers, they don't have even Kubernetes. They're using tools like Portainer running on-premise and running on VMs. So you can combine both worlds. It is a really nice way. You can, of course, using also another tools. It's not we're saying you should use Kro and Score. You can combine them depending on what you like. And yeah, outcome and learnings we shared. We also share a lot of learnings, and we provide all our learnings and all the limitations we found out with Kro. Maybe we did it wrong to the community and also to the contributor. We are working on it. It's also you can find everything in this resource. If you're going to the demo repo, you can go into the learning stuff. Maybe we understand Kro on different on some spaces or some pieces wrong. It can also be possible, but we wanted to share our learnings, also then to get an exchange with the community and understand if there is a right limitation, because I also know that colleague from mine working also on Kro, and they say wait for the version 0.6, and a lot of stuff will be already solved, but it's not about this. It's just, yeah, give it a try and tested it, and yeah. And if you have more questions about Score, you can visit Mathieu at the kiosk on Wednesday at the Score kiosk between 2 and 5. If you want to grab a free copy of this book, you can coming to the WeCluster booth at Tuesday. And I know it was a lot, but thank you very much for your time, and we really value your time, and we will really appreciate if you give us feedback, if you have some feedback for us. And so hopefully we can deliver something return on invest for your time, because I mean, if you are looking at the count here and multiply it with the time, thank you very much in short.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we have a couple more. We have a couple minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions? Do you guys want to take some questions?
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So, I like the Reddit post. In your ideal world, we should give developers Heroku style experience, or they should know about YAML, they should know about Kubernetes. What's your take on this?
I can start you.
Yeah, please.
At the end of the day, that's a good question. Should they do YAML, right? And I think you need a contract, right? At the end of the day, is it a UI? Is it a Slack message? Is it ServiceNow ticket? At the end of the day, I have a request. I'm a developer, and I need to self-serve, maybe, or deploy this application, right? So at the end of the day, you need to find a contract, and mostly out there, it's YAML file, but if you have other solution or a way to do that, I think go for it. You need to understand what will be the simple way for your developer to consume your platform, right? So my take is YAML is not bad. It's a contract. If you want to do something else as a contract for self-serving and automating as much as you can behind the scene, go for it.
I have a similar opinion that I working with different customers, with different developers, with different skill set, and I said our contract is to read and understand YAML. Not to understand all the stuff, but they should read it, because at the end of the day, if you're using Kubernetes and you're having the Heroku experience, it's really nice to start, but after you want to scale, and in the most enterprises I'm working with, they have, I don't know, they have infrastructure, shadow IT, legacy stuff you don't want to see, but this is the reality, and then you need also to educate them, also to getting some like a try. So it depends on the customer. In the most cases, for me, works out to saying, let a common understanding of YAML, and this works very well.
Okay, and one last one. If we were living in a world where everyone is using Kro, projects like Terraform will no longer be needed, or or we will replace in Terraform with projects like Crossplan, Kro, and anymore.
Can I start as well, or do you want to start?
Yeah. I like the flow, so please.
So good question about Terraform here. And I think what Kro is bringing is a gap between, I have some manifest in Kubernetes to describe my container at the end of the day. And maybe there is ingress, HPA, network policy, etc. But we are missing the infrastructure dependency. And with Helm or other, you need to ask your developer or your CI/CD pipeline to provision infrastructure via Terraform, via ClickOps, whatever. But you need to inject the values of the output of this into your manifest, Helm chart, or environment variable. So Kro is a good fit to resolve this, hey, please figure it out in one pipeline, and avoiding the pain point of the iteration, how you inject, etc., etc. So Kro has a good way to do KRM, which is Kubernetes Resource Management, and resolving infrastructure via Kubernetes. And Kro has this abstraction to say, hey, you put whatever you saw, we did in-cluster Redis. But you could do AWS Redis, you could do Azure Redis, you could do GCP Redis, and you could do that via Kro and the reconciliation, injection of output dynamically. So here, to your point is, yeah, but now we don't need Terraform, right? But I understand out there another debate, the debate of abstraction or not, and now the debate of, yeah, but I have a lot of Terraform. And you are asking me to do KRM and Kubernetes way, and I know it's too familiar to point of view. Yeah, Kro is eventually to say, hey, you don't need Terraform here because we are solving something else.
I have a little bit different opinion on that. I wish we can replace Terraform. I'm working with German hyperscaler or European hyperscaler, so it's very difficult because you don't have the provider for crossplane, and you need for Kro write your own because Kro using the Azure Service Operator, KCC, ACK, the acknowledge ACK, thank you very much. And so now you need to educate your platform team to write software and say, I really wish that we're going away from Terraform, but if you're looking at the numbers, I take a look at the state, 70% from the reports, I read different reports sticking to Terraform because they need first to educate the platform engineering team to writing, to understand software engineering, and then to write the own Kro controller. And I really wish that we're going this way because I saw it 5 years ago if OpenShift introduced this operator-driven, and I really love it for OpenShift 4. I'm speaking about OpenShift 4, and I really love this operator-driven approach, but the market was not ready. And they're doing the Kubernetes way on OpenShift 4. And I hope now we will be well educated. And I think this is the way to go. And I hope this is the way to go.
Can I add something? Because it's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a really nice question.
Yeah, because we are always in platform engineering, because at the end of the day, the goal is to build a platform and solve problem. And often, we are solving the developer pain point. But here it's a very good question because if my company is doing thousands of Terraform modules today, if I build my platform without listening to not just the dev, but the infrastructure, cloud engineer, security, I will ask them to migrate all the Terraform investment? No way. They will push back and they will help me to fail my own platform. Yeah. So Kro, or like Crossplane, are not a good fit here because you didn't listen to your other tech stakeholder, right? So in this case, like, I have a lot of Terraform, maybe don't invest here, right? Because you will fail. You will satisfy the dev, but if the infrastructure is like, no, it's not compliant because you are not going through that, you are failing. So, yeah, it's,
Tough times. All right, well, thank you very much.
Great presentation.
We are now on our lunch break. We're going to come back at 2 o'clock. That's about an hour and 45 minutes from now. There is still a sign-up sheet out in front for lightning talks. That'll be happening tonight at 5:15. Have a wonderful time.